Councillors, it's my pleasure to present the first report of the Regulatory and Compliance Group. The report is predominantly statistics based, as you will see. I'll just go through a few of the major points and then happy to answer any questions. If we go to the second page, I think you're all aware of the Street Use and Public Places Bylaw, which comes to effect on the 1st of April. We'll be monitoring that pretty closely after its introduction next week. The Dog Management 2018 Bylaw also comes to effect on the 1st of April, and you'll see in the report the changes that are made with this Act. One of the ones being that all menacing dogs will be required to be neutered. Preparation is well underway for the renewal of dog registrations for the 2019-2020 year, and you'll see there the timeline that's been adopted. We have put a great deal of resource into education in terms of animal services, with bite prevention and dog awareness talks having been delivered to 7 schools and 5 workplaces during the period. In relation to liquor licences, it's interesting to note that with the city growth that's now impacting the commercial sector, the expansion of Bayfair and the new Tauranga crossings counts as approximately 16 new licensed premises, applying for alcohol licences, and approximately 40 new food premises. Moving on to building services, interesting to note for the first time for a long time, 100% of applications were processed within 20 working days. In terms of CCC's process, we managed to obtain 94% within 24 days, and the elapsed days for consents was 33. In terms of the Net Promoter Score, we've been watching this closely. We get weekly reports, and you'll note that a high percentage of the detractor comments relate to the RFI process. To combat this, we've responded to the industry. We've had 65 responses for people wanting to engage with us in terms of what we do require. So we're arranging some workshops in groups of 20 where these people will come in and we will go through the RFI process and show them some examples of what we do require and what's not required. In terms of our engagement, we've been working closely with Western Bay and Plenty District Council with our meetings with the plumbers and drain layers and gas fitters. Together with Western Bay, we also had a joint stand at the Builder Expo run by New Zealand certified builders. And that's really the major points as I see it. Happy to answer any questions or take feedback, what you'd like to see in the report, what you think is missing, or what you'd like to see more of moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. So we'll do as we've done with the previous like to see that developed. I'd like to understand it. I'd like to burrow it into. I'd like to see whether it's a misunderstanding and, in fact, we're the most efficient and affordable TLA, or whether, you know, as I say, it's a single line, but is there anything we've done to give us more? It may be a perception issue. It may be a misperception issue.
Amy, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah. So what we have sitting behind that is a monthly detailed dashboard on all of the media about us, and what they look at is negative versus positive plus neutral. It's not sentiment reporting, so it's purely based on quantity, the number of media reports about us. What we've been looking at in the last year is a series of subheadings, and then drilling down, as you said, John, into what sits behind that. So we've looked at communicating efficiently with our community, for example. I'm very, very happy to share those reports in more detail with you if you would like to see them. They're there and available, so there's a lot of data there. Does that answer your question? Sorry. Yeah.
Councillor Curry.
In terms of annual plan consultation, and sorry, I'm just not aware of what is planned. I know it's online, but is anything going to be posted out or distributed into mailboxes?
Yes, we are looking at a traditional approach for this annual plan consultation. One of the slight differences we are going to be looking at this year is to actually see whether we can print as a full page ad the actual consultation question with the ability to provide a response and feed, and send that back to us free post. We just put that to legal at the moment to ask if we can actually provide enough information in that form for people to be able to answer the question. If that answer comes back as yes, then we will be running that ad in the Bay Plenty Times and the Weekend Sun through the consultation period. This will of course be supported by printed documents available in all of our community, sort of library community centres, and available online.
No further questions around communications. Iwi and Hapu relationships, any questions there? Customer services. And that comes to the conclusion of Carlo's report. Any questions in general about the report? Any suggestions and feedback? Councillor Robson.
To pick it up under the last heading you gave. We're using NPS, which is actually a quite obscure instrument in terms of getting understanding out of things. It doesn't tell you why people are giving you the rating they are. So while serving as a flag, it actually doesn't give you much more than that. Are we measuring response times? I mean, my experience at the customer service centre is it's stunning, absolutely stunning. Where's in paragraph 32? Yeah, I suppose I'm looking at response times. So I know those ones are within, but I'm hearing responses well outside 120 seconds. So I'm looking to see the picture. Yeah, if I tell you 80% of my customers are exceptionally happy and my response time is 3 minutes, whatever I'm responding to in a 3-minute period, and other people actually are happier because it takes me 2 hours. You see the point I'm making, right? So I'm looking for more data to understand what's actually happening. We are recording response times. It might
Jeremy, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah, we do. We got lots of massive amounts of detail on how fast we answer the phone. In terms of year to date, we've got a combined level of service rate answering 80% of calls within 120 seconds. So our level of service, I think you're referring to, is the sort of the bit up front that all call centres are measured against. The NPS, just to let you know that there is actually sort of levels within NPS that respond to specifics. So speed of response, the knowledge of the staff, and so whether or not the person was happy. So they actually do respond on particular items in their sort of feedback through NPS, and we can drill into that as well. But in terms of response times, I mean, we're happy to get feedback from you in terms of how you want us to deliver the stats through this particular forum, and happy to provide those. But overall, we're just about meeting our sort of like year-to-date standard that we set for ourselves.
Councillor Mason?
Sorry, just and the below that, you know, the contact centre's first call resolution rate is 85%, and during the day 90%. That's fantastic. On the surface, that looks really good.
Question for me: are we still answering calls for some of the other councils and our neighbours?
Yes, after hours we do Taupō District Council and Western Bay Plenty District Council. We also day and night do Harbour Master for the Harbour Master, and we're renegotiating those contracts at this time.
Thank you. So there are no further questions. The takeouts and the actions from this paper is some further information around the 0800 number for bylaws and the call hold time, some more information around FTEs for the next report, as also including the loss of productivity across our 2 or 3 staff locations, some further information around the negative reporting through the customer service, and some response times and answer times information, some summaries of that. So that's the takeouts from today's meeting. So can I please have a mover and seconder for DC 73? Mayor Greg Brownless has moved and seconded by Councillor Stewart. Would you like to speak to that, Greg?
Just to say, from what I've seen of this new committee so far, and of course I've only been here for a short time with the other engagements this morning, it's really good, and I think we're getting into the nitty-gritty, and so I want to thank you for that. I just want to comment on the elections, and I think that a real issue that will come up is this business of STV, which will confuse people. They're used to doing it for the health board, but they may not be for council. I have to register my protest against the decision to do that because it was undemocratic. There was no consultation, and I believe that the method with which people elect their council or government is for them to decide and not to have them posed upon them by bureaucratic politicians. So, however, that off my chest. Now that we've got it, we've got to make sure that the people can make the best of it and realise that it's not them who will actually choose who gets there or not. It will be an algorithm, but however, that's another topic. Other than that, great report. Thanks.
Councillor Stewart, do you wish to speak to it? Anyone else wish to speak to this report? No. Okay, so DC 73 moved by Mayor Greg Brownless, seconded by Councillor Stewart. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And on to our final General Manager's report of the day. So we have a strategy and growth report. There are 7 headings in this paper, and it's being presented by General Manager Christine Jones.
Okay, through the chair, I think this would be the shortest of all of the GM reports because strategy and growth, substantively most of the workload goes to either the Urban Form and Transport Committee or the Policy Committee. I haven't repeated a lot of that information, so really just trying to report up updates to things that between that committee in terms of work that's happening, or things that would fall outside of the scope of that committee, which are minimal. So just a couple of points I'd like to draw to your attention. One is the Cameron Road. So there was a resolution passed in December around multimodal. We are currently in the process of meeting one-on-ones with all the business owners that wish to engage with us, and a series of technical work is underway, including some specific requests from elected members when we meet with you. That is currently being modelled, and we'll bring that all back when it's complete. Just to re-emphasise, as we have previously said, there are no decisions being made. This is an engagement and technical analysis piece of work coming together to come back to you for some decisions. The other matter is the Memorial Park Walkway, which has already been discussed on this agenda today, and during the meeting we've circulated the information which was requested, which is the material that's going to be used as part of the public engagement exercise, and the first of those is scheduled for today, and the elect members have got a list of all of the others. And the other matter I just want to talk about was the Te Manga Ocean Outfall Consent. So we are needing to get a new ocean outfall consent. The capacity of the current outfall is insufficient for the growth. We're expecting that that needs to be operational in 2028. We have commenced an internal project team to start preparing for that consent process, which will be complex. Clearly involving and working with tangata whenua from the beginning will be critical, and we're just in the early phases of that. This will be a significant exercise to get a resource consent for an ocean outfall, hopefully for a 35-year period. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, so back to page 50. Firstly, any questions around the Cameron Road multimodal project? Councillor Kirk, then Councillor Malloy.
Thank you. Just in terms of the feedback provided by elected members around the desire to establish travel time advantage for buses with the planned clearways. Hypothetically, if that information coming back provides a very weak benefit when compared to the potential cost, and I mean full cost, the actual cost of putting it in place and the cost to business potentially, how would you address that moving forward? Have we engaged the consultants to do, I'm not sure of the brief, the scope of that work? Could potentially some work be compromised or not needed if we find out at an early stage that actually this project doesn't stack up?
Through the Chair, the purpose of the work is to identify what solutions may be appropriate in terms of giving PT priority in the corridor. So to actually do that, we need to do the technical analysis. If that identifies that certain interventions don't give sufficient benefit, then we wouldn't be looking to pursue those interventions. So, I mean, there's a whole range of options being looked at in terms of clearways, in terms of preemptions at traffic lights, in terms of bus priority at certain intersections, looking at where most of the pressure is along the network. So all of that will go into the mix, and out of that will come a series of interventions that we think would be sensible to pursue.
Current scope is limited to non-project like detailed design or any design. It's really at the first stage to establish the viability.
So there was originally planned to be some detailed design, quite detailed design, and we haven't progressed with that. We'd need to do enough work to be able to assess whether something could work or not, and can you what can you fit into the width of the corridor and those types of things, but we're not moving into a detailed design stage. That call has been made. We want to come back and check in prior to moving through.
I guess my question was along the same lines, given that we want to do things with our community, not for our community. Our consultation with the business owners along there is on the basis of what, just looking to see how we can improve the traffic flows, or that we are looking to have a clear way, or that we're going to have a clear way. I mean, how we approach that conversation is pretty important.
My understanding of the conversations are really just trying to understand from their needs, for the business needs, what they need. We currently don't have the options to present to them because we're still working through the options. So what we try to do is to let them know way in advance when the material was coming to council, so they're aware of it before it was considered by the council. Now we're engaging with them to try to understand what their needs are and to make them aware that work is happening in terms of early option assessment. And then once there are preferred option or options, and some things have been ruled out as not viable, I would imagine we would then go back and have that further conversation, but it's another round to come. So I think we're just trying to step our way through this rather than trying to jump to a conclusion or jump to a preferred option and presenting that option to the business owner. So that means when we're assessing options, we can also look at what the business owner needs are, and also what mitigations might be able to be put in place if some of those options have negative impacts, how might we be able to reduce some of those impacts. And we can only do that by understanding what their needs are and what their issues are.
It would only be their needs under a certain change, wouldn't it, as opposed to what it is now. Status quo, we haven't got any well, not much responsibility, but if there's going to be a change, then their needs. So it's how we're talking to them about what that change is likely to be.
We know that we are looking at a range of options, and some of those options might have impacts for parking. So what they're talking to us about is how they run their businesses, what elements of parking is important, what time of the day is important, what are their customers looking for, all of those things which all form part of the picture of what's going on. So what we're trying to do is understand the corridor and how it's utilised by the public and by the businesses in that area.
Next is the Tauranga parking strategy. Any questions around that? Councillor Morris.
Traffic's pretty bad at the moment around town. Just in terms of parking and finding a park, I note that it's called the Tauranga Transport Strategy because it's about Te Papa. Is that correct? Or does it extend wider to the Mount? The parking strategy.
Parking strategy relates to the whole of the city.
The whole of it, including the Mount?
Correct.
Fantastic. Thank you.
That's my question. Thank you, Councillor Morris. Any further questions on the Tauranga parking strategy? An update to transport provisions within the IDC. City Centre update. Any questions relevant to City Centre update? Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Through the chair, regarding Durham Street, the project seems to be taking a long time. I know it's quite complex because there's a lot of infrastructure upgrades as well, but perhaps could, through the chair, perhaps could Christine comment on how the project is going? I see in our agenda it says due for completion in spring, which seems quite a time away.
So I'm not across the detail of what's happening in the project in terms of some of the specifics. There's going to be a separate report to council on the 16th of April around the progress of that project and the costs and the time delay. So if you're comfortable, we'd leave it to that meeting.
Councillor Robson, then Councillor Mason.
Just thinking about transparency and keeping our community informed, my feeling is there may be some value in when we go to a project, we just have a memo line underneath it talking about what the CapEx, OpEx implications are or the scale of that project. I mean, I'm interested in the Elizabeth Street project in numbers. We are going into a discussion with our community by the annual plan and then an even bigger discussion by the election over their priorities. My challenge is that when people read this report, they won't be able to contextualise what these projects mean, scale, importance, impact or whatever else. And it's very difficult for people who are not in this environment day in, day out, and most of our residents aren't, they don't stand for council, they're smarter than we are. It would be good if there was some sort of contextualisation, and I don't know what level that should be, but I know some of these projects are significant, and my feeling is that if the community wanted to read these reports, they should be able to have some context for that, some scale or context for these projects.
Through the chair. Look, I think we can do that for significant projects or those with high interest, high public interest, if you like, as opposed to perhaps every time we mention a project, it's just, I guess, the ones that we're aware that there's some sensitivities or have significant financial impact, if you're comfortable with that.
The other suggestion would be that when you put these online, that hypertext or HTML, some way of getting from here to other reports, some linkage to other reports, maybe another way of doing it, or actually putting the memo line linking, telling people where to go to find out more about this project, go to. You know, because you don't want to be repeating every project document every time, but it's just a way of making sure that people can, if they want to go down the rabbit hole, you know, we're providing an entrance to them.
Yeah, through the chair, what we'll do is we'll take that feedback and we're going to have a session at some stage following this meeting to try and just ensure that we can continue to involve and enhance the quality of the reporting. Yeah.
Additional to that, with the significance, can we also, is it possible to do it where there's a significant variance, even if it's a little project where we're having a massive budget blur or some alarm bells going off?
Yeah, look, why don't we just, we'll take the feedback and try and work out the best mechanism to enhance the reporting without defining what that is now.
Some elements would also come through the regular AFRAM reports, so we don't want to be duplicating what's coming through there, so we need to just try to get a balance.
Yeah, for example, there's this particular report coming on the Durham Street project to the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee or to the Council Committee for a particular reason. You might imagine what that reason is, but
Councillor Councillor Mason, you had a question regarding the city centre update.
Well, it's actually about Southern Pipeline, but can I ask it now, or do you want to wait till the end? Just wanted to ask Christine, where can you remind us where we are with that?
Happy to cover that in confidential. Yeah.
Further questions around the city centre update? Christine's covered off the Te Manga Ocean Fall and the legislative update. We've got some economic development figures there to give us some comparisons how we're sitting across New Zealand. On the final page we've got Priority 1 and some work they're doing, and Councillor Robson has a question.
It's a regular, and we can pick it up given the nature of these reports. We need per capita on GDP growth. You know, the fact is when you factor out the growth in our population, our GDP growth doesn't look quite so extreme. And also we need to make sure that when we do comparative figures, they exclude, so we don't double count. It's the classic situation in New Zealand. You look at Auckland, then you look at New Zealand, which includes Auckland, and of course the figures are skewed. Some figures need to be per capita. I did pick it up in relation to the transport accident numbers. We need that big baseline in them according to the base number of passenger kilometres we're travelling or whatever else. We just can't keep using raw numbers without context because it's misleading.
Just to, if we're going to be doing that, we need to, as you say, put in context. There's a contextualisation, and I think a more useful number for us in terms of the interventions of economic development, which is what we're about, is the productivity line there, which is GDP per capita by worker rather than by person. And just to note that we are about 20% below the national average. So, we've got a long way to go.
Just a question from me, Christine. On the last page we talk about Priority 1. They're doing a piece of work around staff attraction, and they will report back to us periodically. Do we have a frequency, and would that come to this committee?
My understanding it would come to this committee. We haven't defined a frequency, and feedback from elected members about what you think might be appropriate is welcomed.
Possibility of now putting it on very clear public record. I would love to see the brief, and I'm sure the public would love to see the brief that's driving that work on behalf of councils, because I know some people seem to flip, and sometimes I hear it's a Priority 1 project and other times I hear it's on behalf of councils. I think we need to get our story straight. If we're part of this, then our community should be informed. If we put money towards it, our community should be informed. It would be good to see that brief.
It's noted. Thank you, Councillor Robson. So, any further questions on the whole report? Okay, so DC 66, we've got a couple of actions here that Christine has taken. She's already done the Memorial Park, and we've got a couple of things for overall to look at for the reporting for this committee. So, can I please have a mover and a seconder for DC 66? Councillor Robson, thank you, and Councillor Morris. Do you wish to speak to it, Councillor Robson? Councillor Morris? Anyone wish to speak to this report? Oh, that's short and sweet. Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? And carried. That completes the open section of this meeting. We'll now go into confidential. Mover and a seconder move into confidential. Thank you, Councillor Mason and Councillor Morris. All those in favour, please say aye. Against and carried.